So hey guys, welcome back to another video. I'm Peter Updike, and tonight we're going to do a follow-up on our last video on deer rubs. I want to talk about deer rubs a little bit and what they mean to me as a hunter and what they should mean to you. I look back at my own personal hunting career and I'm surprised at the things that I didn't know, things I should have known that would have helped me. I don't know how many deer I might have passed up or didn't have the opportunity to hunt because I kind of ignored sign. I always was looking for that perfect spot rather than looking at sign. So I've kind of learned not to look at necessarily the surroundings where I could see a long way or maybe see into a stand of timber further down, or maybe looking on a field. I'd pay more attention to where the sign is, and even if it wasn't necessarily a good place to set up, if I could get downwind and if I could overlook areas where I knew bucks were frequenting, well, that would be a good place for me to set up. And I've kind of learned to stop looking for the perfect spot and look at the sign. So this buck here is a perfect example of that. I'm going to share the story of this deer with you tonight. I killed this deer in Dooley County, Georgia. I was a member of a hunt club there in Dooley County, and it was right on the Flint River, and that was a great experience. The guys that had that property were all Georgia people, and I was the only Floridian in the bunch. And my buddy got me in the club, and there was only 4 or 5 of us there, and most of those guys hunted on the weekend. And I would go up, I'd hunt two weeks, and I'd be able to hunt like Monday through Friday, and I had the whole place to myself. They let me have free reign. They let me do whatever I wanted and hunt wherever I wanted. And I was the only guy there that was hunting with a climbing stand. And I don't know, if you were to put this into a time frame, this was probably about 18 years ago. And what I was doing was I was hunting down along the river bank. The property ran, like I said, the property ran down the Flint River, and it went a long ways. And I got up early in the morning from my home in Florida and drove all the way up and got on the property around 10 o'clock. And I walked down what was called the River Road. Now, the River Road ran along the edge of the river. It wasn't a road at all. It was just a little trail that went down along the edge of the river and went on down through there and went further and further and further down into the swamp. Well, I had my deer buggy and I had my tree stand in my backpack, and I walked down there until the river road ran out. I didn't see anything there that really got my attention, and the embankment just kind of dropped off at that point and went through a little slough, and then further along went through a pinch point and ended up in a big flat. And I had abandoned my tree stand and abandoned my buggy there on the trail and walked down there just to take a look around. And what I found was a big rub. I found a big rub, and then I found another one, and I found another one, and I found another one, all in a line. It occurred to me that this is what they call a rub line. I'd never experienced a rub line before, and I didn't know what it meant to hunt a rub line. I knew what a deer rub was, but I didn't know anything about a rub line. I never really experienced a rub line here at home, but there one was, and I thought, wow, look at this. Look at all these deer rubs. This has got to be a good place to hunt. Well, it was a huge flat of timber with some grass. What happened was the river would flood, and it would flood that area and kill all the understory. And then it would recede, and nothing would hardly ever grow there, but there was grasses growing there and different kinds of plants, and I could see way back up in that timber. And I could see all those rubs, and I thought, wow, I ought to set up here. So I made note of the wind. I went back and I got my tree stand, and I came back and I set up. I don't know, by the time I got set up, it was probably around 10 o'clock, 10:30 in the morning. And I sat there all the rest of that morning and all the way till sunset. Did not see a single deer. Now, the thing about that Dooley County river bottom, Flint River swamp is it is different than anything that I'd ever experienced as far as habitat's concerned. It was a spooky woods. When the sun went down, I didn't waste any time going back to the truck. I didn't have that much of a problem in the morning, but I had an issue with staying in that swamp once it got dark. So I would always get down right when the sun went down below the horizon. I thought it was time to get down, and I'd make my way back to the river. And I would just kind of hunt my way back to the truck. And every now and then I'd see deer doing that. But it's always best to stay in your stand. But again, I wasn't familiar with the area. I always talk about and preach, get familiar with the area that you're hunting, because you'll create a sense of boldness. And I lacked that boldness. That place was scary. And I felt scared. I always hunted there by myself. I would always venture off by myself, and a lot of times nobody knew where I was. So getting down and heading back to the truck before it got completely dark was probably a good plan anyway. But again, it was a spooky situation for me. So I left my tree stand on that tree, and I looked at those rubs as I walked back by, and thought, well, you know what, I'm gonna come back and hunt this again. The tree stand's already here. So the next morning came, and I got there, and I walked down the river road. And as I was walking down the river road, remember that was the trail that led to where my stand was, I found another rub, and that rub was made in the night. I took a photograph of it, and that's it right there. And it was on a pretty big tree. I don't know, I suppose those trees were 6 to 8 inches in diameter. And this buck had made that rub. I always think that's kind of cool. I killed the deer that made this rub. Anyway, I got in my stand probably 10 minutes after good daylight. This was breaking daylight, and got in my stand, and there was a little thicket there to my left that I could not see around. And I heard something snap a twig. I heard a little noise, and I looked to my left, and this buck was standing 20 feet from me. I couldn't believe it. And he was looking straight down that rub line. I couldn't believe it. My rifle was turned the other way, and I thought to myself, well, you know what? I'd like to shoot that deer. And I turned my rifle around slowly, and he never picked up on the movement, and I was able to shoot him through the vitals, and I killed him dead right then and there. Man, I was really excited, because that was the only deer I killed on that hunting lease. I was a member of that club probably 5 or 6 years. This is the only deer I killed on the lease. And I got down and admired my deer for a little while. Then I realized I had to get him back to the river road. So I went back and I got my deer buggy. I unhooked my tree stand, and I put the deer on the deer buggy. And I ratchet strapped him down. I carried the tree stand all the way back up to the river road, and started wheeling my deer back to the trail. Well, it was muddy, and there was a steep incline. Like I said, when you got off the river road, it dropped way down, so it was probably 25 or 30 feet. Real steep drop. So I had to figure out how I was going to get my deer up and onto the trail. So I tied the antlers to the handrail, to the railings of the buggy, to the handrail of the buggy. I tied the antlers, and I let the back part of the deer rest on the rest of the buggy. And then I took a rope, and I tied a rope around the handle of the deer buggy and threw it up. It was 25 or 30 yards up that incline. So I threw the rope up there, and I wrapped it around a tree, and I'd pull on the handle of that deer buggy, and I'd inch it up, and then I'd pull on that rope. It kept the deer from rolling back down the embankment if I made a couple of inches. And after 10 or 15 minutes of pulling and resting and pulling and resting, I finally got my deer up onto the trail. And it was easy from there. I was able to load my deer up on my truck and get him back to camp. And I got him back to camp, guts and all, because I wanted to weigh him. He was an extremely big deer. It's the biggest deer that I'd ever killed body-wise. And we weighed him, and he weighed over 200 pounds. And I was real impressed that I was able to get that deer back to the truck. And one thing about hunting in Dooley County is it's a trophy management county, and they have to be 15 inches wide. I wasn't sure if it was from the outside or from the inside, but I measured the deer when I got him back to the truck, and I realized he measured 14 and a half inches on the inside. So I wanted my deer to be legal, and I'm not going to try and convince you that this is a great big old buck, but he's my buck, and I worked hard for him, and he's my rub line buck, right? But I realized he was 14 and a half inches on the inside. Now I can make him go 15 on the outside, but I wasn't sure, and it was kind of in question. So I dialed up the game warden. I had his phone number there, and I called him on my cell phone and told him, I'm hunting down here in Dooley County and hunting on the Flint River, and I've shot a buck that measures 14 and a half inches. And I gave him a hunting license, and I gave him my name and an address, and he was able to look it all up on the phone and check all of that. He said, Mr. Updike, I really appreciate you calling and letting me know. If I need to come see that deer, I'll give you a call, but consider that deer legal. And I really appreciated that. If you do anything in question, like I did, your best course of action is just to call somebody and let them know. And it all turned out fine. And my deer was legal, and I was able to enjoy having this deer right in the back of my truck without having to worry about it or look over my shoulder. But I learned something valuable on that hunting trip about reading sign and reading rubs. Like I said, we don't have rub lines here in Florida that I've ever seen. I've seen some pretty decent rubs. Maybe some of you have seen rub lines, but I can't really say that I've seen a succession of rubs going through the timber that one deer that appeared to be one deer was making all those rubs. But when I hunted on that rub line and killed that deer, it kind of turned the page for me. Number one, it taught me a little something about reading sign. And it taught me a little something about getting my deer back to the truck, that if I find myself in a position that I can figure out how to do it, right? You can get a deer buggy, or you can drag your deer, or whatever you got to do to get your deer back. You can do it if I can do it. So that's my rub line buck. I like to pay attention to rubs regardless of what size. Again, I showed an example of what a spindly rub is. Now let's talk about when do I think a rub is significant enough to consider a mature deer has made it? Well, the first thing that I do is I try and push that tree over. If that tree bends, if it gives way, it's probably a smaller deer rubbing that tree. If I can take that thing and just bend it to the ground, it's probably a smaller deer rubbing that tree. If the tree rub isn't 2 inches in diameter, I pretty much consider it a small rub. Of course, all that can change. You never really know, but I kind of go by statistics. I don't run trail cameras. I prefer to read sign. I prefer to see sign and set up on it and see what comes to it, right? I couldn't imagine anything being more depressing than having a patch of ground and putting up a trail camera and never getting a decent buck on it. So, yeah, I just don't run trail cameras, so I read sign and I read rubs and I read scrapes. Big scrapes, big dominant scrapes is what I look for later on in the season. And then I hunt them throughout the whole season. I don't really believe that rubs and scrapes go cold. I think deer continue to visit the area. And I've experienced that in my own hunting career, that even after the rut's over, okay, big bucks that made big scrapes and big rubs continue to visit the area. I had another buck that I had hunted that I had seen and saw his rub and hunted over his rub, and I shot at that deer with my bow, and I missed it, and I wasn't able to kill that deer. That was another example, but it was only one rub down in a slough, and I set up on that rub, and sure enough, he came to it at 7 o'clock in the morning. So that's your lesson for today. Hunt rubs, even if they go cold and it seems like there's not any activity, and hopefully you'll get an experience like I did. I'm sure I'm proud of this deer. Now this buck the mount is called a full sneak. I like it. I think it's kind of cool, and it's different than all the rest of them. It looks kind of crazy, but hey man, I like a full sneak, man. It looks cool. All right, that's today's video. Hope you liked it. We'll do something again soon. See you guys. Bye.